I'll piggyback on your nuclear comment earlier, because I think it's just like ridiculously important that we have the ability to have unbounded access to energy. There is no such thing as scarcity. We're not going to run out. If we had the will to invest in an electric grid that was powered by nuclear reactors on a much broader basis, the cost of energy would fall to de minimis amounts.
Can you get up that chart we had?
On that though, before we get that up, I saw a thing the other day. A bank in Australia are now doing a per transaction carbon footprint on their, like, to the customer. So with every transaction, you get like a score, or in terms of how much carbon that's emitted, and that's like one step before they put a limit on how much you're allowed to have in a month.
They will take it from you if you let them.
That's the Australian commies. Keep telling Danny he needs to move back to the UK. Come hang out with me in Bedford.
So I think it's this is a live grid in the UK.
Yeah, so what I thought was really interesting in this is that I think it's set up wrong. Because I understand what they're doing. We want to move, we want to decarbonize the world as best possible. We don't even have to have an argument over whether you believe it's important or not, but I do. We need to decarbonize the world. So we look here, 19% of the UK energy is coming from fossil fuels, 48.2% from renewables, 17.7% from other sources, and then 15.2% from transfers. So great, 48.2% from renewables, okay? Again, we don't need to have the argument about whether you believe they are actually renewable, but the point is that it's misleading. Do you know what this should be? This should be carbon-free, carbon-emitting, or carbon neutral, carbon positive, whatever the things are, because nuclear should sit alongside solar, wind, and hydroelectric.
And calling gas the same thing as coal is also ridiculous. If I were to take an operating coal, and let's live in carbon accounting land for a moment. If I were to take a coal plant and decommission it and replace it with a combined cycle natural gas plant, I have decarbonized the vast majority of emissions coming out of the coal plant.
So really what we should have them do is graded because this isn't about fossil fuels or renewables. This is about carbon.
It's about emissions or not.
Emissions. So it should be, because what would happen is nuclear would go to the top.
By a wide margin.
And I think it potentially and I know there's timescales to this, but it might go above solar. It might go above wind. I don't know in terms of the construction cost and energy output, but like, I'm sure it can be calculated.
Do you know what biomass is? Let's just like really go to the middle of it.
Because biomass is, I only found it in the last one.
Yeah, biomass is cutting down trees and burning them.
Yeah.
Is being called as carbon free or carbon whatever as nuclear.
Well, it's just other sources.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's meaningless.
It is a propagandized chart, because to call biomass and nuclear in the same category from an emissions perspective is just a laughable farce, right? If you take a tree, you cut it down and you burn it, number one, the tree can no longer take carbon out of the atmosphere. How do trees grow? They consume carbon out of the air, right? So you've now limited the ability for that tree to remove carbon from the air. Then you burn it and you turn it directly back into incredibly emission heavy, incredibly just Go start a campfire in your house and see how long the room is livable, right? It's ridiculous.
Okay, anyone listening, please do not do this.
Yeah, obviously don't do that. But
I mean, that is a way a lot of people heat their home in England, though.
It's actually happened.
But with a chimney.
Yeah.
No. It's actually happened. There was some guy who, look it up, the guy who created a bonfire in his front room or something. Somebody actually did it and burnt down his house. Fucking idiot.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
But this is the point, is that if we were going to deal honestly with this type of problem, this global crisis, this climate catastrophe, and we were going to deal with it honestly, there is no such thing as a coherent environmentalist position that is anti-nuclear and pro-climate mitigation. That position doesn't exist in the factual world, right? Yeah. We live in we're gonna take an attempt to live in the objective reality together here, where if you believe that there is a pending climate crisis and you do not believe in nuclear energy technology, you are anti-human. And I no longer know how to relate to you on the merits. Nuclear technology is critical infrastructure for humanity all over the planet. And there is no position that can go the other way on that one.
So Anthony Jarrett, who we had in, the nuclear guy, worked on the subs and the aircraft carriers. He actually did a calculation, and it's deaths per kilowatt hour?
Terawatt hour.
Deaths per terawatt hour. So you can actually look at look, this itself isn't perfect, but anyway, deaths per terawatt hour. It was something on solar, what was it? 0.
I think solar was 0.02 and nuclear was 0.03 or something like that.
Yeah, and then like something like coal was massively high.
It was like 9 or...
Yeah, because our example was, one pit collapse can kill more people than have ever been killed by nuclear. Do you know how many people have been killed by nuclear accidents?
It's got to be less than 1,000.
Yeah. So based on our interview, and we have to double check this, no one died at 3 Mile Island.
Nope.
No one died at Fukushima.
Correct.
Which I thought there was one. Yeah. Well, I thought there was one guy. Chernobyl?
It's like 17 or something.
46.
Yeah.
46, that's it. Now, look, there is a different factor. There is a huge amount of land which is inhabitable around Chernobyl. We have to accept that. And I don't know what the exclusion zone is around Fukushima. That those things do exist as well. They have to be taken into account. If there is a disaster, you can't just say death. And there is a chance, like if Chernobyl had been much worse, the exclusion zone would have been bigger. I accept that. But that was decades ago with old technology run by Soviets. No offense, Soviets, but run by Soviets in an era of different regulations.
Oh, and by the way, at Chernobyl, only one of the reactors melted down. The other 2 continued for 17 more years.
Oh, did they? I didn't even know that.
The other 2 reactors kept producing electricity.
I didn't even know that.
I think they only got decommissioned in like 2017 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't have that kind of like protective seal that all the things are built with now. I've come a long way in nuclear in the last few months, ever since sitting down with Alex Epstein, actually, forcing myself to go down that rabbit hole. I am now firmly in the position that we need to see a proliferation in the development of nuclear reactors and a reduction in the regulation that slows that down.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
50% of the budget for a nuclear project is estimated to be regulatory spend, not construction spend.
Yeah. What I want to know is my potential conspiracy theory is I wonder how much of the work of the environmentalists who are anti-nuclear and anti-green energy is financed by the fossil fuel industry. I wonder if they've gone full circle and said, yeah, well, let's get these guys to do our business for us. Because I don't fucking trust anyone when there's money involved.
At the end of the day, when you look at technology that is obviously positive sum, and I have yet to meet anybody who is willing to read, if someone's willing to read 3 books about the nuclear energy industry, and if I had to recommend 3 books, it would be Shorting the Grid, it would be Energy and Civilization, and The Grid.
I've got 2 more for you because we got a couple yesterday.
One was called Atomic Awakening.
Yeah, Atomic Awakenings. I bought that. And what was the other one? I bought that on Amazon. Give me 1 second. I'm going to tell you. Do you know Atomic Awakening?
I've heard that. I haven't read it yet. I've heard the title.
Okay, let's go and see what I ordered yesterday. Power to Save the World, The Truth About Nuclear Energy. So that's by somebody called Gwyneth Cravens. So apparently she used to be an environmentalist and did the work. And she was like, okay, I'm wrong. And so she's written a book about it.
Phenomenal. And so that, I don't know anybody who's done the work and ended up saying nuclear is still bad. And so we have an obviously positive sum technology, and then we've got prohibitive regulatory environments that has basically said we can't build these.
In fairness, Everett, who was on this morning, he actually said to us, the regulatory environment is changing.
It is.
There was a bipartisan bill that's pro-nuclear. I mean, look, it's coming down to the fact that we have an energy problem, and then suddenly these things melt away.
Well, and let's pick on our favorite friend, which is Gavin Newsom in California.
Yeah.
So Gavin Newsom has been a long-term anti-nuke environmentalist until, I don't know, he decided maybe he's got larger political aspirations, and all of a sudden it's not so important for us to shut down Diablo Canyon. And now maybe we need to give it a little more extended useful life, and maybe we should save the plant. Why? Because it's very hard to run a political campaign in California when there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people suffering from rolling blackouts, which is what happens when you remove firm, low-cost baseload from an electric system. And I would criticize a Republican doing the same thing. This is a totally bipartisan issue for me. That I believe that if you are on the team that wants to shut down reactors, I am not on your team.
So if Bitcoin fixes this kind of incentive model, what does it do within the private sector? Because you talked about millions of voluntary interactions, but we know companies can equally be as bad as politicians when money's involved. They can be greedy, they can pollute, they can destroy the environment, they can manipulate markets. We've seen this in the unchecked crypto industry, where any fucking idiot can create a token and they can pump it, make themselves rich and run away. Getting rid of the government doesn't suddenly make everything good. It's how do we make everything more honest?
And I would caveat to say that it's not about getting rid of the government. It's about getting rid of the mechanisms by which the government can pick winners and losers.
Fair.
Right? That this is not saying we don't want to have a government. This is saying that it's not reasonable for the government to pick energy providers, technologies on a winners and losers basis.
So what do they do instead?
I mean, I think that there's some maybe this is unpopular in some of the full-blown ANCAP circles, but I think that there are negative externalities, there are pollution, behaviors that companies should be restricted from engaging in. And that making your toxic waste somebody else's problem is wrong, and there needs to be a mechanism by which we keep people from doing that. I don't know that the roads argument is one we need to have at all, but I think that there's some negative externality prevention and public good development opportunities that I think the government is good at working on. And I think that those are phenomenal when the right people are resourced the right way and incentivized the right way to do that. I don't think we should have private courts. I think that the court system functions really well as part of the government. So I think that there's obviously a role to play. This is not a get rid of everything argument, but it's an argument that should we need $100 million to get through all the regulatory hurdles to start a bank? Should it cost that much? Should it be that onerous? No, I believe that a more competitive environment produces better outcomes for everybody. And so it's really about sort of the pulling of the ladder up behind the existing incumbents, the managerial class, and further entrenching them, that further retrenchment that they seem to be incentivized to participate in. That's the part that's hard for me.